you just popped in, and surprises we have. Here's Field today, guys.
Hello, everybody. Paula and Tracy and I are here to serve you. So if any of you have questions for any of us three, please forward them to one of us.
Sounds good. How are you feeling?
Tracy's going to run it, okay? I'm just going to step back and be really quiet today.
Okay.
So God bless everybody. I'll just be in the background if you need me. Tracy and Field, the floor is all yours. God bless.
Okay, bye-bye.
How fun. How are you feeling today, Field? Let's ask you that.
Well, I'm doing fine. I was just, by the way, I really appreciate that when you send text messages, you copy them to me and Paula both, because if you didn't do that, I wouldn't know if Paula's in the loop. But because of your practice of copying us, then I know that you're communicating with myself and with Paula, which gives me less anxiety.
Yes, indeed. I wouldn't let one know without the other, of course. So,
Okay.
we're excited to have you today again on ALGN Truth here. And I know people have lots of questions. Who wants to go first? And maybe that will lead into something great for us today.
Hey, sorry.
It's good morning, all. Good morning, Mr. McConnell. Hope you're doing well.
Good morning.
Good morning. This is Mary from Canada. I just wanted to ask you, being a pilot for so many years, right? And of course, being in a jet fighter or fighter jet, and also a commercial airline. My question to you is, sir, do you think the Earth is flat?
No, I know 100% for sure that the Earth is round.
Wow. Thank you very much for confirming that.
Well, the reason I say that is I've been up to 57,000 feet, and which is not legal, by the way. But at 57,000 feet, the curvature of the Earth is very much apparent. And just think of all the other things that have been misrepresented in addition to the flat Earth. It's like our governments want us all to be ignorant and afraid. Well, I'd like to think I'm not ignorant, but I'm 100% sure I'm not afraid.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Tim, go ahead with your question.
Hey, Phil, this is Tim. How you doing today? Good to hear from you again.
Yeah, I'm doing fine. How are you?
Living the dream, man. I had a question for you. Oh, go ahead. I had a question for you.
No. Go ahead, I'm listening.
Tracy, she had kind of, talked about, and I know that you have like a extensive military background when it comes to flights, and I'm just assuming that you have experience with training people. And I was just curious because I do have a cousin that was, he graduated Air Force Academy, and I think he made it to the rank of colonel. But he was when he left, he was flying F-35s. His name's Scott McLaren. I don't know if that name is familiar to you or not.
No, it's not. But during my military career, I was in the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Air National Guard. And so my association with the United States Air Force is quite minimal.
Are you still there, Tim?
Yes, Paula, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you? So is there any questions that you had for Field?
No, that he answered it, and I thank you for that. And you know what I'm going to do for you, Field, is I'm going to post that plane that is present there at the Veteran Memorial there in Van Sant County, so everyone could see it again.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I don't know if Paul is listening or if Tracy's listening, but here's something I've thought about regarding that aircraft, and I haven't told anybody, but I'll tell you first, Tim. I might like to have somebody that's good with video stuff or whatever you call that. I would love to have Denise's name put on the front of that airplane. And I'm not asking any specific person to do that. I'm just letting all three of you know that my wife, Denise, who sadly died 2 years ago, her birthday is the tail number of that aircraft. Now, what's the chance of that when that aircraft was contracted for before my wife was even born? My wife was born on the 4th of September of 1965, and that aircraft, the F-4D down there in Canton, Texas, the tail number is 40965, which is Denise's birthday, and I find that to be remarkable, and I fully intend to keep Denise's name alive and her legacy alive. But on top of that, what I'm challenging myself to do is to honor her legacy and her, the real Denise was such a lady that I just can't imagine my ever, and of course I'm 73, so it's not like I'm chasing skirts every night, because I'm not. I haven't, not for a number of years. But I just want to do everything I can do to keep the memory of Denise alive and keep her legacy as clear as I can. And I will be calling her son, whose name is George, and he lives over in a suburb of London called Brimley Green, and he's an electrician Monday to Friday, but I can get a hold of him on Saturday. But I've had Denise's ashes in my house now for almost 2 years, and I know that George would like to get his urn. Half of Denise's ashes are in George's urn, and the other half are in my urn. And I think that after waiting a couple of years, and by the way, the reason I was waiting is I was on probation and house arrest, and so it was impossible for me to go to London with Denise's ashes. And then I was sick for almost, well, I don't want to say almost, I want to get it right the first time. I was sick from October of 2022 until May 16th of 2023. And so even if I had been released from probation and allowed to travel, I wouldn't have felt comfortable traveling. And so I don't foresee, and also this is a psychological thing, but I just can't imagine my going to England or to Wales without Denise. It just wouldn't seem right. So I think I'm going to be talking to her son George this weekend and see if he's agreeable to having me send his urn with his mother's ashes via FedEx. And I'm a little squeamish about that because I spent a long time in the airline industry, and I know that things can get lost, things can get broken, but I'm hoping that I was going to say, he's my son-in-law. I'm hoping that he will agree that it would be okay with him if I sent his mom home on a FedEx flight, and it's just a matter of making sure I get his mailing address correct, which I think I have, and also any instructions for FedEx. But anyway, I think I've answered your question. And so if you have another question, or if somebody else has a question, then we can handle that or attempt to.
All right. Who's got the next question? Anybody want to ask one?
I don't want to ask one, but I would like to say hello, Field. This is Jenny. Welcome back to the chat.
Oh, hi, Jenny. How are you? By the way, is your name spelled Jenni?
Yes, sir, it is.
Oh, okay. The reason I ask is I asked Paula either last night or this morning, if I'm spelling your name right, because that's how I was spelling it. But the reason I'm sensitive to that is with my name, F-I-E-L-D, Field, it's such an unusual first name. Generally, people call me something else. And it's more often than not Bill, B-I-L-L, or Phil, P-H-I-L. And I don't care what people call me, but I want to be respectful to people like you, Jenny, and make sure I get your name right. Okay, over to you.
Well, you got it right. Not many people do. So thank you for that. My birth name is Jennifer, but when I was in 5th grade, everybody was Jennifer. So I switched it for the nickname Jenny. So you did good. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All righty. That was cool. I never knew that your name was Jennifer. Jenny.
Yes, ma'am.
That's awesome. I like Jenny on you. Anybody else have a question for Field today?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Melissa.
Hi, Field. It's good to talk to you. My question is, I was wondering how you were able to figure out what your sister was doing.
Well, when I figured it out, it was roughly, I'm guessing now because I'm getting old and it's been a while, but I'm thinking it was back in the time frame of September to November of 2008. And at that time, I was working daily with a man from Canada whose name was David Hawkins. And he apologetically said to me one day, it was in the morning in the fall of that year, he said, I hate to tell you this, but your sister is really a bad person. And I said, well, don't hate to tell me it. Just go ahead and tell me, I can handle it. And so he actually figured out that my sister had been involved with George H.W. Bush and John McCain and other nefarious people. And so when I considered that as a possibility and looked into it, I found that not only was she bad, but she had been asked by George H.W. Bush to start the Senior Executive Service. And that request came in no, wait a minute, that's not right. Maybe it is, I'm not sure. She was asked, it was 1900 and something. She was asked by George H.W. Bush to start the Senior Executive Service, and that request came in 1978. And then she accommodated that request in 1979. And, most people that are listening to this broadcast right now, number one, they've never heard of the United States Senior Executive Service. Number two, if they've heard of it, they probably want to believe that it's a legitimate part of our federal government down here in the United States. But it's not. It's a brokerage house for traders. And I can't think of any traders that are more guilty than George H.W. Bush, my sister Christine Marcy, and John McCain, in that order. Over to you.
May I interject?
Yes.
And she did that. Christine Marcy, your sister, did that under the Carter administration when Jimmy Carter was in.
Well, who's this talking? Is this Paula?
Paula, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. He did it. It was done during the Carter administration.
Yeah.
But the Carter administration didn't have anything to do with it other than allowing it to fall into place.
Exactly. I was just putting it out there for a more accurate time frame. And I have information on that, archived information on your sister being the founder. A lot of that's been wiped from the internet. Oh, actually, it's all been wiped. It's all been scrubbed, but I did find some archived information on that, and also archived information of her being head of the U.S. Marshal Service. So for those naysayers out there, I have the proof on paper. So I just wanted to put that out there too. So over to you guys.
Okay, this is Field, and I just want to interject here that I've often said that in December of 1988, my sister Christine Marcy called me at home one night. I was home alone. I don't know why. I guess I was between marriages, but enough about that. But I was having an in-depth conversation with a friend of mine named Jack Daniels, and my sister called up and says, Field, I need your help. And I said, how can you need my help? You work for the federal government. Isn't there help available to you in Washington? And she said, yeah, but they don't know what to do. And I said, well, what's the issue? And she says, I, Christine Marcy, am the director of the U.S. Marshal Service, and we've been told that we won't be allowed to put federal prisoners or federal defendants on commercial airlines anymore because they have to be shackled and handcuffed, which would delay in the emergency evacuation process if that were to happen. So do you, Field, have any idea how we can get around this travel issue? And I said, yeah, I know exactly what you need to do. You need to contact Northwest Airlines tomorrow. And I gave her the phone number, the man's name, his fax number, and his email address. I said, that man is in charge of placing obsolete aircraft into the hands of somewhat normal people. And we're getting rid of Boeing 727-100s and Douglas DC-9-30s right now. And if you call him tomorrow, just mention my name. And it's not like I have any power, but when you make a cold call, it's only polite to let the person you're calling know why you're calling them and who prompted you to do it. So I prompted my sister to call this guy, and then she said, well, what do I do if I get a DC-9 or a 727-100? I said, well, then what you do is you spend about $900,000 of taxpayer money to get the aircraft capable of being remotely controlled. Now, this is via the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot. And this is how I knew that my sister and Hillary Clinton were involved in 9/11, is because in this conversation thus far, I've told my sister about how to remotely control airliners. And then on the morning of 9/11, as I was looking at the same TV coverage everybody else in the country was looking at, I could ascertain that the aircraft, which was allegedly United 175, hitting the second tower, that aircraft, if that was actually an aircraft and if that was a videotape that was accurate, I knew from the characteristics of the maneuvering of that aircraft that it was not being flown by a human pilot. And I also knew, due to my airline experience, that airline pilots would have no proficiency in flying above 250 knots below 10,000 feet, because there's a speed limit in the continental U.S. If you're below 10,000 feet, you cannot exceed 250 knots. But because of my background as a fighter interceptor pilot, where it was my obligation and my duty to go out and intercept unknown flying objects, I knew for sure that what I saw on tape, on TV, the aircraft or the alleged aircraft, which could have been a drone, it could have been, what is that stuff called where they impose images?
CGI.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, whatever it was maneuvering as if it was going about 330 to 350 knots, which means, number one, if there was an American, and when I say an American, I don't mean American Airlines, I mean a U.S. citizen airline pilot, they wouldn't have proficiency flying at 330 to 350 below 10,000 feet because it was illegal. And if they'd done that and gotten caught, they'd be in trouble and probably lose their license. So, this stuff is not hard for me to figure out. And then once I think I've got it figured out, I check with other people with similar backgrounds and see if it makes sense. And, well, as far as the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot, yeah, it made sense, all right. It made so much sense that on the 8th of March of 2014, when MH370 allegedly was lost in the South Indian Ocean, I knew that that was not correct. And so myself and a friend of mine from Phoenix, Arizona, put out a YouTube, and it's been scrubbed from the internet too. But I'm confident that one of your listeners right now, Jenny and Paula and Tracy, one of your listeners out there has a copy of that YouTube, and it's called Boeing Uninterruptible Autopilot, and it's dated March 9th of 2014, but it actually came out on March 8th of 2014, and the discrepancy in the dates is because the international date line. And so I think I've rambled on long enough with my answer. Are there other questions?
Yes,
I'd like
there's
to go next. Oh, go ahead, Tracy.
oh, well, you know what, Lynn, you go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Field.
You're welcome.
I've spoken to you the other day, last time you were in here, about my son that was at the Air Force Academy that left. Well, I've shared a lot of your videos with a great teacher there. Her name is Sandy. She was fired, and she was a great mentor to a lot of the cadets there. She's a physicist, a pilot, she's just everything, chemist, everything. I mean, I'm just honored to call her as a friend because, she's so smart. She's like a Sheldon. But because of her, my son listened to me about some things. Okay, so I've developed a great relationship with her, and I shared your video about the remote plane control, and she's like, I don't think that's possible. And so I know she's going to hear this recording, so I would love for you
to talk to a pilot about it?
Yeah, well, first of all, she's wrong. And this is not some super secret technology that's brand new. In fact, I'm going to slow down my speech and I'm going to relax and I'm going to dictate the title of a YouTube that any of your listeners can go to YouTube and watch it, when they turn this recording off. And the search terms at YouTube would be Q. That's that's the letter after QRF. Yeah, QB47 remote control 1961. And so that super smart lady, if she doesn't want to believe me, she can believe the United States Air Force, because in 1961 they not only flew a B-47, which is a swept-wing six-engine jet bomber, without crew members. They took it off, they flew to altitude, they rendezvoused with a chase plane, and then they came and landed it. And this is all part of the public record. It's not me saying it. I'm just letting this super smart lady that says that it's not possible to remotely control an aircraft. Well, first of all, she's wrong. Second of all, not only is it possible, but in many cases, it's better than having humans control the aircraft. The only problem with remote control is most passengers on American, Delta, who else operates there? United, Alaska, any of these airline companies, their passengers don't want to get on board the aircraft and look at the cockpit and see it empty. They want to see a couple of people up there, at least a couple, if not four. So I would just challenge that lady. In fact, who am I talking to in this conversation about the Air Force Academy cadet that dropped out?
This is Lynn Ford, and I want to make sure I said it right. I don't know that she said it's not possible. I'd have to look at her message. She just said, "Oh, I don't really see that." And so I wanted to be really clear about that.
Oh, well, thank you for clearing that up. We all need clarity, don't we? But, the point is that my rebuttal to her statement is still the same. In 1961, which was, what is that? That's 63 years ago. The United States Air Force demonstrated the remote control of a six-engine swept-wing jet bomber, and they videotaped it, and it's available on YouTube. And in case anybody failed to copy down the search terms, it's QB47 1961 remote control. That should pull it up. And I'll check that. And if that's not correct, then I will correct it and I'll send it to Jenny after the show concludes.
Thank you so much.
I'm just going to interject quickly. It's Paula again. I have the patent for that. So I'll put that in the chat after we get off the phone.
Oh, you got the patent for the BUAP?
Yes, I do. Somewhere, definitely. I'm pretty sure I posted it in all my videos as well. So, but I'll pull that up and I'll put it in the chat after.
Yeah, and that's, if I seem like I'm sort of disgruntled or a pain in the rear, I hope I'm not. But this stuff is no secret. It's been out there for 60 plus years. And the patent, by the way, I'm glad you brought that up, Paula, because I'm not sure which patent you're looking at, but the latest patent in terms of time was in, I think, 1995. And that's the same year that the Boeing 777s were delivered new from the Boeing factory with the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot installed. And how do I know that? Well, I know it for several reasons. You can find information like Paula has on the internet, but also I had a friend that worked at the highest level of Boeing, and he actually told me some stuff about some other aircraft that have the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot installed. And I'm not trying to give a free pass to Airbus or anybody else that makes airliners, because in 1995, Boeing started putting the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot in their aircraft. But in 1989, Airbus had started putting Airbus-sourced uninterruptible autopilots in their A320 family of aircraft. And so this stuff is not new. And, you know, for me, it's a little bit frustrating to know the truth and to see that so many people aren't aware of the truth. And once they're made aware of it, they want to try to make it go away. Well, you can't make it go away, because on the morning of 9/11, not only were 4 airliners equipped with BUAPs, Boeing uninterruptible autopilot, but their drone replacements, which are another 4 aircraft, in this case without humans, they had the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot, and all 8 of those aircraft were operated remotely. And that's where my background fits into the promulgation of 9/11 truth. Is I've been aware of this stuff for quite a while, and I recognized it on the morning of 9/11. And so I feel compelled to share the truth with people, not just on radio shows like Jenny or Tracy or Paula, but I've also filed 3 federal lawsuits. And if I was a little bit calmer, I could probably remember all of them. One of them was civil case 3:07 hyphen. Now I'm going to stop there. I think if someone looked up civil case 3:07 hyphen and then Field McConnell, because I'm the guy that filed the lawsuit, I think the rest of it would show up. But I also filed one called civil case 3:07 hyphen 49, which was Field McConnell versus ALPA, Airline Pilots Association, and Boeing Aircraft. And you see, when I do this stuff publicly and on the internet, it's not like Boeing or the Airline Pilots Association don't know what I'm doing, because it pops up on their computer screen a lot faster than they probably wish that it would. But once you get your foot in the door with a civil case or a legal filing, it's going to stay there, and it's not going to go away until something makes it go away. And my last lawsuit was filed in 2008, and that was, I think that was civil case 1:08 hyphen 1600 parentheses RMC, and then unparentheses. RMC was the judge's name, Rosemary M. Collier, and in 2011, my lawsuit, which was filed in 2008, finally made its way to the docket. And so I was in a courtroom with Judge Rosemary M. Collier, who treated me very respectfully, which I'm sure made her want to regurgitate it because she didn't like what I was doing. But also in the courtroom that day was my own sister. And my own sister looked like she was on, I don't know what it's called, amphetamines or speed, but she was just nervous as a cat. And she couldn't sit still in the courtroom, so she was standing up and pacing because she was there to make sure that I was not granted any courtesy by the court. And to some degree I was not, but you know, I don't insist on getting 100% of what I think I am due. And I thought that Rosemary M. Collier did a very good job of treating me respectfully, and yet trying to address the truth of this case. And the reason it's important that she did that is the truth of that case, that singular case, Civil Case 1:08-1600, parentheses, RMC, that would have taught the world what happened on 9/11, because what happened on 9/11 is these aircraft, the four real airliners and the 4 drones, they were all being operated remotely. And this stuff is not rocket science. If anybody just took 20 minutes and looked up Boeing uninterruptible autopilot, you would find that once a pilot, whether it's the captain or the co-pilot, once a pilot of any of these airliners engages an autopilot, and the airliners all have at least 3 autopilots. The sad part is the crew members don't know about the third one. They just know about the captain's autopilot and the co-pilot's autopilot. The third one's down below the flight deck in the E&E compartment. And the way this process is when one of the human pilots engages an autopilot, whether it's autopilot 1 or 2, that arms several things. It turns off all the communications. It turns off the radios, the transponder, the ACARS, automatic crew and reporting system, crew activity reporting system. It turns off all that automated communication, but it also arms something which is really sinister, and it's called the I must be getting tired of my old age, but it's called the I got it right on the tip of my tongue. Paula probably has the patent for this, but
I'm sorry, I was away from the phone for a moment. The patent for what, Field?
that system that it automatically introduces a colorless, tasteless.
Yeah, I do have it. I'll have to put that out too. I do have that as well.
Okay, well, that's very important because that's how they got the pilots and the flight attendants and the passengers all to remain calm right up until they fell asleep, and then they subsequently died. So that was murder on all 4 of those airliner flights, which was United 175, United 93, American 11, and American 77. All of the crew members and the passengers were murdered, and they were murdered by elements of the federal government. How's that for a statement?
That's a heck of an answer. I really appreciate it. And I know she will too. I mean, she does homework, she does her research. She's going to really enjoy that response. I appreciate that. Yeah. One last question. Do you know anything about Richard Clark, the superintendent of the academy, and when is he going down?
I know nothing about Richard Clark. And when you say the academy, are you talking about the Air Force Academy?
Yes.
Well,
The one
I'll take a look at that. And
the one who made the public statement. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, ladies first. You go ahead.
The one who made the public statement that when my son first went to the academy that the vaccine was not required, and he made a public statement, and we have the video, I will honor religious exemptions, basically implying you won't have to get it. And then he denied it, and all the parents called his office. I mean, he probably got 1,000 phone calls because I told my Telegram groups too, you know, and they took your name and number, who called, blah, 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 blah. Said that he didn't say that. We all had it on video. And I'm like, the oath of the Air Force Academy. I will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those among us. But I'm like, but you're going to? I mean, it was just an ugly scenario. But he blamed the DOJ. He said, I have to do what he tells me.
I have a letter dating back to 2019. I believe it was either June or July, where they were forcing mandates on the military for COVID-19. Get this, in 2019. So we're talking 6 months prior to the official announcement of COVID-19.
That's awesome. And like I said, Sandy, she did so much work on this. I mean, it just goes on and on. So, you know, my son did a 400-page document, and they said, after careful consideration, we're denying you Jack Ford. His name is Jake. So you couldn't even get his name right. Oh, careful consideration. Then they pushed the cadets to go to Europe and get another vaccine that was not approved, and they said, oh, it doesn't have the mRNA. I mean, they just did one thing after another. Dishonesty too, because a senior cadet said, we can't get that, we're not stationed there, we're not even supposed to be doing it. They go, just tell them you're there, but you're going to have to pay for your own flight. I mean, it's just a snowball of stuff. And luckily, Sandy, she's like, do what is right. You've done your homework, stick to what is right. And she really is a great person. And I really appreciate your response about the airline. She's going to enjoy that.
Well, can I tell you a secret if you promise not to tell anybody?
Okay, but we got a lot of listeners.
I'm going to tell you anyway. Okay, one of my aspirations, one of the things I want to accomplish before I die is I want to provide myself with a venue where I can speak publicly about the failed leadership of the United States military branches. And you've just, made a good case for me. And the Air Force itself was involved in the 9/11 attack, but so was the Navy, and so was the Coast Guard. And I have no reason to be aware of the fact that the Army was not involved, because the thing that I want to do, and I want to do it as a service to not only young military men and women, but also their parents, I want to be able to speak openly and truthfully to these young military people and tell them about the leadership void that has existed in the United States military for probably 50 or more years. Because when I went to the Naval Academy, I lived in constant fear that if I ever said something that was not truthful and I got caught, that I'd be kicked out of the Naval Academy. And I never was, and I graduated. But that's a lot of pressure for a young adult, and I was 17, 18, 19, and 20 when I was at the Naval Academy. And it's really scary to think that not only your career so far, but your anticipated career is going to be jeopardized if you get caught telling a fib, when the leadership of the service branches are fibbing all day long.
Well, Field, she is your girl for that. I'm telling you. I mean, she she fought for the truth. She has a lot of other stories, and she's your person. I'm gonna pass her information on to Tracy so she can get it to you, because she said I would really love to meet him. I mean, you guys will have a lot to talk about.
Well, I'd love to talk to her too. And if you pass her contact details to Tracy, they'll get to me. And then on this phone call right now, I'm asking Tracy to please give you my contact details privately, not on a radio show, so we can all communicate, because we're all being victimized. And now I'm really going to throw you a curve. Recently, I was listening to something on the internet. And some racists come in every paint job available. Red, yellow, black, and white, we are precious in His sight. But pardon me for coughing. I heard somebody speaking with authority, or presumed authority, say that in 1865, roughly, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. No, he did not. In 1865, roughly, Abraham Lincoln enslaved all the rest of the people that were not already slaves. And how did he do it? Well, with taxes. All of us, whether we're white or yellow or red or brown or black, we've all been forced to pay taxes, which they are illegal, actually. And but anyway, nothing to worry about. It's all going to get remedied, and it's going to get remedied fairly well. Maybe some of your listeners out there, Jenny, know that, or maybe they think that the Brunson case has been decided in the favor of the Brunsons. And if that's true, what that would include is the nullification of the 2016 election and the return of Donald Trump to the position of authority in the United States of America. And when I said earlier that all the military branches are disloyal, that doesn't mean that every single person that's senior is disloyal. But, there's somebody who's been parading around as the president of the U.S. since January 21st of 2021, and that person was not elected. And Donald Trump, I believe, is going to be replacing that person. But we'll just have to wait and be patient and not assume anything. Just wait for the truth to occur. And, the truth will set us free. And speaking of being free, even though Abraham Lincoln is alleged to have freed the slaves, he didn't. He just made all the rest of us slaves. But the truth will set us free. And if nobody wants to believe me, you can just look in the Bible. It says that. And it says, I think it's in the book of Matthew, and it's Jesus saying that I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody gets to the Father except through me. And somewhere in that area of the Bible, or in John, it talks about the truth setting you free. And the truth will set us free, because it will break the chains of enslavement. And these people that have been enslaving, well, like the lady whose son left the Air Force Academy, they were treating those young cadets very inappropriately, saying you have to get this shot or you'll get kicked out. Well, it wouldn't take me 20 seconds to say, hey, kick me out right now. I want out of here. If you're not going to play by the rules, I don't want to play the game. But a lot of the young people in the military are too timid or too brainwashed to stand up for their own rights. But just because you're a 19-year-old kid in the Air Force or the Marine Corps or the Navy or the Coast Guard or the Army, that doesn't mean you have to put up with falsehoods. We need to hold the leadership accountable. And that's one of the things. I have two key issues that I want to work on before I die. One is the empowerment of children to be safe, because when I grew up, I was never molested by an adult, and I don't think it should be customary for lots of children to be molested. And there was just a recent incident where a commercial ship got pulled over, I think in San Francisco, and there was a lot of human trafficking in the form of children on that ship. Well, that shouldn't happen not only in our country, the United States of America, but in any civilized country. We all talk about resources like gold and diamonds and oil. What about human resources? What's the value of a child? And I'm starting. Pardon me. I'm so passionate about this that I'm starting to cry right now. But we need to take care of our children. We need to take care of our veterans. And if we, the people in the United States of America, take care of our children and take care of our veterans, between the two of them, they will take care of us. Because the veterans, even the people that are currently in the military can take care of us right now. But the children, if they're guided correctly and if they have good leadership, as they turn into adults, then they'll take care of us. But somebody has to take the first step. And among others, I'm one of those somebodies. So I'll get off my high horse now and be quiet.
I'm going to interject. I just want to, it's Paula again. I just want to add, when we were talking about Abraham Lincoln, this is an eye-opener, and a lot of people don't know this, but Karl Marx was his right-hand man. So that speaks volumes right there. I've done a lot of research into that. And then, of course, there was the original 13th Amendment that got wiped out. And I would also argue that the 14th Amendment was never even officially ratified. So these are topics for another day.
Okay.
As far as children goes, Field, I'm 100% with you on that one. That's why I work with kids. So anyways, back to you guys.
Well, Paula, I'm glad
Alrighty.
you're with me on that. Oh, go ahead, young lady.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Field. I didn't mean to trample on you for a second, but go ahead and finish your sentence.
Well, I'm not sure if I can, because I'm so passionate about caring for children and caring for veterans. I just hate to see dishonesty in the leadership of the military and the federal government. Now, keep in mind, when I say dishonesty in the federal government, I am using my own sister, Christine Marcy, as a prime example, because she was given various positions with lots of power, and she used all of that power against the welfare of the United States of America. And she's my only sibling. And, I can't forgive that. And my deceased mother and father wouldn't want me to call off the dogs. And so I don't know if my sister is even free and alive anymore. I have reason to suspect she's neither free nor alive. But I don't have time to cry for my sister, because I'm so busy crying for our children and our veterans. Over to you, young lady.
And Field, she was more evil than Hillary Clinton. Is that correct as well?
Well, in my estimate, she was. And the reason I say that if you know who Hillary Clinton's father was, he was a mafia professional. And if you wanted to know who my parents were, both of my parents were military people that served voluntarily in World War II during the time of danger. And they also were patriots and Christians. So what I'm trying to identify there is the fact that Hillary would not have a family background of honesty and service to country, whereas my sister would. My sister, Christine Marcy, grew up in the same house as me, and she had the benefit of being raised by a couple of parents that wanted to prepare her for success. And unfortunately, what they prepared her for was treason. Over to you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, because a lot of people need, finding the correlation between Christine Marcy and Hillary Clinton and all of them. Thank you for that. Any more questions? I think Gittel had a question if he's still here. Yeah, Gittel, you want to go ahead and ask him?
Yeah, I just got a big wow on my face. It's an honor to talk to you, Phil, and I thank God for your braveness and your integrity and Jesus Christ being in your heart. It takes Jesus Christ to do what you've done and what you continue to do. And you answered a few of my questions, but I start out with they grounded the 737 MAX because of 2 crashes and getting back at Trump because we were kicking out 737s like 1 every 8 hours, and the economy was booming under Trump. And they had 2 crashes, one in Ethiopia and another one somewhere else. But they grounded the 737 in March of 2019 to September 2020, I think. And we were, my question was, and you'd answered it, you had ties to Boeing, that were you surprised that they stopped production on the 747 Jumbo at 1574, which equals 17? So I mean, I've got several things to talk about, but you're just fascinating. Thank you for your service.
Oh, you're welcome. But you've got me stimulated by when you said 747, and then a flight number 1574, I think. And what was your point there? I missed it.
Oh, I worked for LTV for 41 years, and
okay.
we had the empennage for the 747, 767, 757. The 747,
okay.
under the Obama era, they closed the LTV main factory in West Dallas, but they also outsourced all our back shop work on the 747 to China, with China promising us that they'd buy more aircraft. Well, they didn't buy any more aircraft on the 747-8, and therefore the program closed at 1574. The last airplane that went off our line was 1574. Ironically, it equals 17, and that's where I got the 17. 1574 added up is 17.
Well, there's a lot of 17s out there over the last 6 years or so, and I'm trying to think. I think I have a license plate with a 17 on it, but I'm not sure. I've got a fair amount of license plates, but no. What's going on there is not only are Airbus and Boeing at war with each other, but China is at war with the United States, and they're using aircraft, as weapons. And when I say that, you don't have to be a great internet researcher to find that in June, I believe, of 2006, and I think that's right, but Boeing actually was sued because they exported the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot to China. They sent 96 aircraft and then some spare replacement parts. They sent them to China, and China used them against us. You just talked about 737s crashing, one in Ethiopia, and the other one back then was somewhere in the Pacific Rim. And in both cases, had the pilots been properly educated on the tolerances and the capabilities of the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot, neither of those fatal accidents would have occurred. But that goes back to poor leadership and lack of training. Because, I'm just nobody, and yet I know this stuff. If I'm nobody and I know it, the leadership of Boeing and Airbus and other airlines, the leadership has to know it, and yet they don't do anything to remedy it. But going back to Jesus Christ and God and their eminent power, this will get remedied. But in the meantime, until it is remedied, how many more people are going to lose their lives for this dishonesty? And I think the answer should be none.
Amen to that.
Thank you, Phil. I just lost my mom. I just lost my mom in this war, and it was just because of Big Pharma. So thank you for your service. Thank you for your answers.
Yeah, and thank you for your kindness. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions? I got 2 on the board, but anybody else want to ask real quick?
I have
Tracy,
a question.
go ahead.
Sorry. Hi, Phil. This is Trish again. I have a question about the Oklahoma bombing. My husband had gone to elementary school with Timothy, and my father-in-law worked with his dad at General Motors back in Lockport, New York. And we lived up there at the time that the Oklahoma bombing occurred, and we had seen a lot of the news and everything around their parents' house and stuff. And I'm just curious if your sister was involved in any of that, or exactly if you know what happened exactly and why it was done.
Yes. Yep. My sister was involved, and so was Hillary Clinton. And keep in mind, that was, correct me if I'm wrong, Paula, or anyone else, but that was almost a year to the day after the Branch Davidian thing, and my sister and Hillary were involved in that too. And so it's like my sister and Hillary were hired guns to go out and do the dirty work for the federal government and to make their bosses happy. And in the case of my sister and Hillary, one of their bosses at one point in the process was George H.W. Bush. And I'm going to say something now, and this is not the first time I've said it, but I think he was the most evil federal servant in the United States government that's ever existed. And I think my sister's number 2 right behind him. And so what they did at the Branch Davidian is they sacrificed a bunch of children in the nursery or the kindergarten, and they sacrificed them. And I don't know what their thinking was, but they didn't get away with it. But Bill Clinton, and therefore Hillary Clinton, had some paperwork in the federal or in the Murrah building that demonstrated their relationship to BCCI. Let me stop right there and ask Tracy. Tracy, can you ask any of your listeners if any of them know what BCCI is, or can you Google it?
Okay, does anybody know what BCCI is? And I'm Googling it now.
Yeah, it's BCCI.
BCB. Oh. Okay. Let's see. It says Research Institution in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Is that
No,
it?
that's okay.
No, okay.
No, that's not it. BCCI was a bank in Arkansas, and Bill Clinton was doing some very nefarious activity with the BCCI, and the evidence against Clinton was in the Murrah building, and so they had to destroy it. And when they destroyed the evidence, they destroyed the building, but they also destroyed some children. And once again, my heart goes out to veterans and children. And so when I found out that my sister and her sidekick Hillary were involved in participating in the murder of innocent children in the Murrah building, it got my attention. And once I get my attention, I keep focused on what's going on and try to do what I can do to remedy the situation. And the remedy is often by getting the guilty parties adjudicated. And that's difficult because the judicial system in the United States of America has been very suspect for a long time.
Yeah. And of course they had, as Paula interjecting again, of course they had all of those PatCon operations set up. And that was to set up people like Timothy McVeigh. And there was also part of the Ruby Ridge stuff too, right? Infiltrate, take over, basically to take down the patriots, the true patriots. So, but anyways, back to you guys.
All
well,
right.
I think they're wasting their time because you're never going to defeat God. And if some person or some persons plural or some organization is endeavoring to serve God and the United States of America, well, anybody who tries to stop that or suppress it, is going to be doomed to failure. And that's why it's most likely Hillary Clinton is no longer alive. Bill Clinton is down in Guantanamo. He's incarcerated for life. And these people have gotten away with a lot for a long period of time, but they don't get away with it forever because, there used to be a name called the Grim Reaper, and people were afraid of the Grim Reaper. Well, if you want to be afraid of something, be afraid of Jesus Christ. If you offend him, he's going to hold you accountable. And can you escape that? And the answer is yes. If you pray to God or pray to Jesus and admit your sins and turn away from your sins, then you might escape with your life. But, that's a might. People, there's a payday that comes for every transgression, and that should make the faithful people in the United States, North America, and English-speaking Europe, that should encourage all of us to know that if we don't capitulate and give in, that we will have victory, even if we have to suffer a little bit. And I'm going to stop right there and said, in my case, I've suffered a little bit because on November 4th of 2019, I was arrested on a false arrest warrant and a legal process that did not follow due process. And once I got incarcerated, then I had my wife die, which was very hard on me. And then when I finally got released from the legal system down in Florida, I came home to an empty house and no wife. And, it was a fairly sad series of months. But, I'll recover and I'll get strong. And I will continue bringing the battle of right versus wrong or good versus evil against the perpetrators of the evil. They know who they are, and they know who I am, and I'm not afraid of them. And the ones that have some sort of judgment are probably afraid of me, just because I speak with a fair amount of authority and accuracy. And I see on the internet, and so often in the truth movement, there's people that want to express stuff, maybe to make themselves seem relevant, but they don't know what they're talking about. And so all they're doing is make themselves look like people that are really misled. And I know some of those people personally, and I feel bad for them. But if they just stick to honesty, they wouldn't fall into these traps. I'll be quiet now.
Well, don't be quiet and don't be shy. But how are you doing on time, Field? Are you doing okay?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. What time is it, by the way?
It is 12:30 our time, friend.
Okay. Well, I could continue or we could call it quits. It's totally up to you.
Well, I have a couple more questions on the wall, but does anybody else have a question in here that you would like to ask?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Field. This is Aquaman, and I'm a retired Navy Chief Petty Officer. I wanted to thank you for your service and especially for waking me up so long ago, particularly with the 9/11 stuff. And speaking to that, I was hoping you would be able to talk a little bit more about, I think it was Serco or SES that had betting pools on those disasters, like Oklahoma City and the aircraft, and of course 911.
Okay, is your question, do Serco and SES have betting established on these events?
Yes, I believe you talked about that before, Naval Danger.
Yes, and when I talked about that before, I was going back to probably the 1860s, and there was somebody can search it on a search engine or Google, but I think it was called the White's, WHITE apostrophe S, White's Club in London, where they bet on things. They bet on things that were nonsensical, but they paid rich rewards. So this has been going on for a long, long time. And as far as Serco and SES, let me personalize this. My sister started SES, and she started it, as Paula pointed out, during the Carter administration. But Carter was, he's just a tool, and George H.W. Bush was still calling the shots. But as far as Serco goes, does anybody in the chat room right now feel confident that they know who the majority stockholder in Serco is? If so, please blurt out the answer.
It's Prince William.
Who?
It's Prince William.
Oh, yes, that's right. Who's this, Paula?
Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't have blurted it out. I should have let somebody
I know.
Yeah, Prince William, who's married to whatever her name is. Is it Catherine?
Yeah, if that's a girl. They all look like men to me. I don't know. They just all look like men to me.
Well, a lot of those European people that are supposed royals are deviant lifestyles. Here's an example. Right now at my feet, I've got a shopping bag that's pink and black vertical stripes, and it's from Virginia Secret, if that's right.
Virginia or Victoria? Victoria, right?
Yeah, Victoria's Secret. Now, Paula, do you know what Victoria's Secret was?
She was a guy.
Yeah, and see, that's like the fake royals. Oh, which reminds me, one of my other projects is to help take down the fake royals. And the fake royals, as we know them today, are supposedly King Charles and supposedly Queen Camilla, if that's her name. And then as far as the other fake royals, like Prince Harry and Prince William, well, Prince Harry's last name should be Hewitt because his biological donor was a military man in the British Army that was in charge of keeping Diana safe. And he's not only kept her safe, but he settled her. And if anybody has a background in bovine procreation, if a bull services a cow and the cow settles, anyway, that's why Harry has red hair, and the other guy, William, has no hair at all, hardly. But see, William's father is not Charles either. William's father is King Juan Carlos of Spain, who impregnated Diana. And I can't blame him. I mean, she's beautiful and lovely, but it's just a sickness or an illness or a plague that over in Europe, a lot of the fake royals are not only of dubious backgrounds parentage-wise, but they also lie about who they are and what they're going to do. And so it's really a shame that so many people in Europe have to put up with that quality of leadership. And, what I'm sort of biased towards the military, but if you were a young soldier or sailor or Marine in the royal services, wouldn't you like to have valid leadership as opposed to being lied to? And it is possible, but it hadn't happened yet. And so they're still killing young men and young women in the interest of trying to project power over innocent countries that they want to dominate. Okay, I'll get off my high horse and be quiet now.
Oh, you're too funny. Does anybody else want to ask a question? I have a couple more, and then we could call it a time so that Phil can get rest. Anybody?
Tracy, I'd like to ask a question.
Okay, go Denise. I think I misplaced you in order. So go ahead. I'm so sorry.
No, I haven't spoke yet. So you may have just seen me try to get in. Hi, hi, Phil. My name is Denise, and I have been following you for quite a while. I think maybe when we got started on the Q, and then that kind of took us to some of your YouTube stuff. And so I was really intrigued with the knowledge from 9/11. My husband knew right away that wasn't what it seemed to be. But also, I live here in the Oklahoma City area, and I was actually on a golf course with my daughter. She was in high school when the explosion happened. So we definitely felt it. And so my question is, I have since done more stuff and realized that the Clintons were really involved in that. And so was Timothy McVeigh someone else that has another name and is still alive, or was he actually a patsy and was executed? And the other thing is, I heard that James Comey was at the scene of the Murrah building bombing.
Okay, who was at the scene of the Murrah building?
I had heard that James Comey, that worked the FBI, isn't that his name? Am I saying it right?
Yeah.
Head of the FBI. That all the way
Yeah,
back.
his last name's pronounced Comey, but that's who you're talking about, Comey?
Yes.
Well, he's dead now, don't you?
Kind of, yeah. I thought he might be, but I was just what I was intrigued with him is that his participant in all of these things, these atrocious acts, even back to the Waco thing, that he's connected to every one of them that far back.
Well, I think that's sort of how they get their dues paid to the club, is by being useful tools that will do evil things. Then they get promoted and retained by the system. But for those of your listeners, Jenny, who don't know this, James Comey, who was the FBI director, when he went through his tribunal in Guantanamo, at the end of the tribunals, they're very gracious to the guilty parties. They say, how do you want to die? And the choices include hanging, gunshots to the head, lethal injection. But in the case of Comey, when the judge or the judge advocate general pronounced him guilty, I wasn't there, and so this is speculation, but I believe it. The judge told Comey that even though they typically allow the guilty parties to choose their manner of death, in the case of James Comey, they weren't going to do that because James Comey had participated with the Obama administration in the acquisition of 30,000 guillotines, and so they used one of Obama's guillotines to decapitate James Comey.
That's awesome.
May I interject?
Yeah, please do.
I heard that James Comey had a very sick fetish with those guillotines.
Okay, my connection is not that good. James Comey had what?
A very sick fetish with those guillotines. Oh,
I didn't know that, but I'm trying to think. He had another fetish too. It involved homosexual sex, where he and his partner would take turns dressing up like Howdy Doody.
I think that was it Mueller, his partner?
I don't know. Let's put it out to Jenny's chat room. Actually,
pretty sure Robert Mueller and James Comey were lovers. I've heard that from numerous places. Another thing, back to Comey, I heard that he used to drive around and pick up homeless and take them back. And he had one of those guillotines, and for his sick fetish, he would decapitate them for fun. So, Comey was a sick man from what's been described to me. So,
well, do you know how tall Comey was?
I believe he was 6'8".
6'10". And the point being, when you grow up as an adolescent and then a young adult male, and you're 6'10", you think you're powerful and capable of leaping tall buildings. But they're not. I mean, they're just taller version. I'm 5'11", and if James Comey rematerialized and knocked on my door, I would have a 357, and I could turn him into Swiss cheese long before he could use his vertical advantage on me. So anyway, I think it's unfortunate that so often men think that might is right. No, it's not. Right is right. And most of us have a conscience, and we know what's right and what's wrong. And as much as we might be interested in doing something wrong, hopefully before it's too late, we'll come to our senses and do what's right. And as an example of that, and I might have mentioned this earlier in this radio show, but after my wife Denise died, I was infatuated with one of her neighbors over in England. And then after being infatuated for 21 months, I realized, I can't allow myself at my age to become infatuated with anybody, any female. So what I've done is I've just decided that as much as I do not necessarily like being alone, I'm going to live alone the rest of my life. So, in fact, Paula and Tracy, I think you both told me that when I get to heaven, that 3 people are going to meet me at the gates of heaven, one of those people being Jesus Christ.
Yes, sir. And the other 2 is going to be Dr. Good Vibes and Denise.
Yeah, well, I see that's why I am sort of torn to being by myself for the rest of my life, because if I do have the pleasure of meeting Denise at the gates of heaven, she was a smart lady. Well, she is a smart lady. She's just gone. But she could look in my eyes, and if I was guilty of anything, she would detect it right away. So the only defense I have against that is not doing anything that would disappoint Denise. And I don't think that means I'm a mamby-pamby. I think it means I respect my wife. And I just wish for women around the world, not just in North America, but I just wish that more women have dedicated husbands. I've never been a woman or a wife, but I have been married a couple times, more than a couple. But at this point in my life, I realize that the greatest thing I can do for Denise, my wife, or her son George, who has no real father. I mean, obviously somebody impregnated his mother, but that person, it was a hit and run where that guy didn't hang around to raise the child. And that's not anything to do. That's not my son-in-law, George. That's not his fault. And it shouldn't be a burden on the memory of Denise, my wife. And, I respect her so much because without a husband, she had a good job, a good career, and she provided a good home for her son, George. And, I really respect George, but I respected his mother first. And the only reason I'm telling this story is because Jenny, I think that's right, wants to have radio shows where she can have people such as myself just talk about our journey. And my journey is, I think it's fairly interesting. I know it's interesting to me, but I also know it was not guided by me. There's a great quote in Proverbs, and I can't put my finger on it right now. I think it's something to the effect of a man plans his course, but Jesus directs his steps. And I speaking from experience here, I haven't directed my own steps, but I recognize now, and I hope it's not too late for me, but I recognize that the steps in my life were all they were all managed or directed by God, because God knew where He wanted me to end up, and God knew the course that I would have to travel to get there, and that's what I've been doing. And I'm very thankful to God that He has been so kind to me as to keep me safe from the fowler's snare. That's something your listeners can look up on the internet, Jenny. Fowler's snare. It's in the Bible, and it talks about how men will set traps for men, but God will keep you safe from the fowler's snare. And I'm someone who likes the English language a lot, and so when I see a term like fowler's snare, it sticks with me, and I don't forget it. And I try to think of it every once in a while, like I just did. But I'll let that go for now and see if there's any more questions.
I have 2 on the board, but we'll take one more in here, and we'll take the 2 on the board because they can't speak because they're at work. Does anybody else have one? I know, Delinda, you might have one. Delinda, are you there? Oh, Mike Tice. Go ahead, Mac. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. And thank you, Phil. Q minus. I'm a Dutchman. And my question, of course, is about the MH17. I've done the work, I've seen the pictures, the videos. And what I see is people in winter clothes and Asian people. No Dutch people. And a weird liquid on the ground. And a lot of questions, of course. And I know many of them you cannot answer, but can you share something about that?
Okay, well, you're sort of all over the place, and we have a bad connection. Can you make a very short question of it that I can pick up on right away?
My question is about the MH17, the plane. And I've done my research, and what I've seen, the pictures and the videos, seems like people from the MH370, something like that.
Yeah.
And I heard you speak about it last time, and I wonder if you can tell more about that.
Well, yes, I can. MH370, and on the morning, well, on that far side of the international date line, MH370 landed at Diego Garcia and shut its engines off at 0611. But that was still March 8th over here in Wisconsin. And so myself and a guy from Phoenix put out a YouTube on the day that MH370 allegedly was lost in the South Indian Ocean, because it was never lost. In fact, the people that do these heinous acts, they might be evil, but they're not overly bright, because the Boeing 777 had 2 I'm trying to think, Rolls-Royce Trent engines, and each of those Rolls-Royce Trent engines had a engine-driven generator that would regularly download geographical position and altitude and speed and some operating parameters with the engines themselves. And so when it was alleged that aircraft had gone down in the South Indian Ocean, the people that understand aircraft knew that wasn't necessarily right. And so what that did was, when the aircraft was taxied into a hangar at Diego Garcia, the ground handling crew expected to see a left hand or a right hand from the lead flight attendant giving a thumbs up at the door, and the door was specifically door one left. And there's a round window, and the protocol or the requirement was that the flight attendant inside the aircraft would have to give a thumbs up before the people outside the aircraft would try to open the door. Because otherwise, if they didn't get a thumbs up, that meant that the escape slide was still hooked up. And just recently somewhere, I read of a escape slide being deployed inside an airliner causing injuries. So this stuff, flying is inherently safe. And as long as people follow their procedures, they should never have an injury or a fatality. But in the case of MH370, when it landed at Diego Garcia, all 239 people on board, and that includes the crew and the passengers, they were all dead. And they were dead by that item that I couldn't remember earlier. I just remembered it now. It's some form of inducer, where it allows tasteless, odorless, and colorless chemicals to mix with the cabin air, and it's a dial-a-yield or dial-a-dose system, which can cause people to relax, or cause people to fall asleep, or cause people to die. Well, in the case of MH370, they were all dead. And so that presented a problem to the United States, the British, and the Israeli militaries who were involved in that episode, because now they not only have to get rid of the aircraft, but they have to get rid of 239 bodies. And the aircraft registration of MH370 was 9M-MRO. And I believe that the cadavers, the ones on the ground at Donetsk, Ukraine, they were two populations. There was a population of partially black people due to the decomposition of their body, but then there was approximately 40 people that were European Caucasians, and they, interestingly enough, their bodies were devoid of blood. And how do people know this? Well, people know it because they've heard it and they've researched it and they believe it. But there was a woman that responded to the crash scene in Donetsk with a video camera, and she was speaking Russian, I presume. Maybe there's a Ukrainian language too, I'm not sure. But she was speaking in her native language, and she was confused were two distinct populations, one of which, oops, have I lost you?
No,
Yes,
you're
I
still
have.
here.
Oh, okay, I got an incoming call. Let me get rid of them. Hang on. Well, I'm too old to, if I try to get rid of them, I'm going to goof this up. So I'll just wait for them to go away. But I think most of the listeners, yeah, they've gone away now. I think most of the listeners heard the important part. The important parts were when the aircraft landed at Diego Garcia at 6:11, the humans on board the aircraft had all been rendered dead by the air tranquilizing injector or inducer. And that created a challenge for the militaries that run Diego Garcia, because not only did they have to get rid of the 239 cadavers, they had to get rid of the aircraft. And so the aircraft was expended. That's a lovely term, EXPENDED. The aircraft was flown at some point. Let me just think about what month this would have been. Yeah, okay, I got it. At some point in probably early July, the aircraft, which served MH370, 9M-MRO, was redispatched to go to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and there it was serviced by an Israeli ground services company named Menzies, MENZIE apostrophe S. And then a day or two later, it was operated remotely using the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot. It took off from Amsterdam, and it flew a course which was very close to the typical course that MH17 always flew. And but towards the end, it made a slight left turn and headed towards Donetsk, where it was exploded or expended. Unfortunately for these dummies who like to hurt people and kill people, they didn't have enough explosives on the aircraft, so it came down relatively intact. And a lot of the bodies which came out of the aircraft when the fuselage may have been breached by the explosives, a lot of those bodies came down intact too. And that's why this woman from Donetsk, Ukraine, named Anna, she was capable, or she was able to videotape the crash scene. And, thank goodness for her, because that makes it really difficult for the perpetrators of MH17 to get away with it, especially since MH17 was really MH370, and the passengers were commingled between MH370's passengers and approximately 40 Caucasian Europeans that were all involved in AIDS and HIV research. Did I answer your question, sir?
Yeah, you did, with the bombshell at the end. It's yeah. Guess who
Okay.
took the patents of those people? The Rothschild family. Huh.
Oh yes, I know. They did it through Freescale, which is the more modern name for Motorola. And there were four technological, I don't know what you want to call them. There were four patent participants on MH370, and the fifth name on the patent was Jacob Rothschild. And so when the four engineers, software engineers, died or were killed in the event of MH370. Jacob Rothschild inherited that patent, and he sold it to a company in Israel. Were you aware of that?
Oh, wow. No, that's totally new to me. Wow.
Okay. Yeah, if you track it down, and I think if you Google Freescale patents MH17 or MH370 or both, and Jacob Rothschild, I think it will lead you to the ultimate destination for that patent, which was a software enterprise in Israel. And if I know it, you're going to find evidence of it too if you know what to search for.
Oh,
Got it all written down. Thank you for that lead. Thank you, sir, for the knowledge and John being here. Thank you for that.
Okay. Well, thank you. And good luck trying to make sense of all this. It's pretty evil stuff.
It is, yeah.
Tracy, you had two questions that were written down. Do you want to just get to those next?
yes. And then, because I know
Okay.
that Field's probably getting tired. So from Canada Girl, she says she's sending her love, but she said, thank you for your fearless and tireless efforts whistleblowing to save humanity and take down evil. My name is Romaine. I live in Vancouver Island, Canada. Due to my work, I'm sending this to be read in case I'm unable to ask live. I loved listening to every bit of the Q&A from a few days ago, and now I have two questions. First, do you realize that often when you speak of beloved wife Denise and you get emotional and then you apologize, there are countless women listening quietly and thinking that you never need to apologize for loving a woman so deeply and feeling emotional. Each one of us know how lucky you both were to have experienced such a pure love, something many never get to experience. The second part of her question was, I was a school teacher for 28 years. I often wonder what the teenage version of super inspirational people like you was like. Were you similar, confident, fearless, badass warrior back then, or did you evolve over time as you learned of the evil? Thank you so much.
Well, I'll handle the second question first. I evolved, but I don't want anybody to give me credit for anything because all I've done is follow the breadcrumbs that God has thrown in my path, and I've held on tightly to the hand of Jesus Christ, who's led me through this. It's really an unusual journey, and it's one that nobody that's reasonable would voluntarily sign up for. But see, I didn't sign up for it. God asked me to do it. And the question I would pose to fellow Christians is, if you felt certain that God was asking you to do something while you profess to be a Christian, would you do it without fear or favor? Or would you cower and make excuses? Well, that's what choice I had to make. And I made that choice somewhere around 2006. And I decided that I was going to do what God asked me to do, no matter what the outcome might be, and knowing fully well that the outcome could be my death. But God didn't design me to worry about that. He designed me to try to follow the breadcrumbs, see where the evil led to, and then publish it. And so it made it when I put it out on the internet, it made it pretty difficult for the perpetrators to keep denying it because they couldn't defeat the information that I was publishing. And it sounds like I'm taking credit for that. No, I'm not. I'm giving all the credit and all the glory to God and His Son, Jesus Christ, for leading me on this incredible journey. How's that?
That's perfect. Now we have one more question. We'll let you go and get some rest because I know you're getting tired there. From Karen, she would like to know where Bush No Name, she calls it, where he is buried.
Bush No Name, is that G.H.W. Bush?
I'm taking it is. She's at work and she can't talk, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm sure it's G.H.W. Bush. And if she wants to know where he's buried, that's quite easy to find out. She can use a search engine and just ask where POTUS 41, that was his number, where he's buried. But he was put on a freight train, and the freight train engine had a registration number, just like Denise's airplane has a registration number. But in the case of the locomotive that was pulling the freight cars, the number on the engine of the locomotive was 4141, which was a double reference to POTUS 41. And if you just do a little bit of research on the internet, you can find where he was buried in Texas. But a better question, and I'm not chastising this person, but a really good question is, if POTUS 41, Bush, oh, and I know why. You said Bush and No Name. I think No Name is actually McCain, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, that's okay. I'm going
I
to cover
meant
that
both,
right now.
Tracy.
What's that?
Karen, you want to?
I meant
What?
both of them. Where are they each? Yeah, where did they go since they're not honorable?
Well, they weren't allowed. Neither McCain nor G.H.W. Bush were allowed to be buried at Arlington because they're both traitors. G.H.W. Bush was sent to Texas, and I don't know off the top of my head where he's buried, but it's a matter of public record. And as far as John McCain, I've actually been to his gravesite at the U.S. Naval Academy cemetery, and I've got a picture, and I don't know who might have a copy of that picture.
I have that.
Who? Yeah, but who are you, Paula?
I'm Paula, yeah. I'll post that in the chat too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and so that picture of me at John McCain's final resting place, which actually should be his final torment place. He was really an unhappy loser. In fact, he shouldn't have graduated from Annapolis. He had a tutor, and even if his tutor got him to graduate as number 893 out of 900 people, I think he was really mathematically close to the bottom of his class. And back then, during his time or my time at Annapolis, if you were at the bottom of your class, you would not be selected to go to pilot training. It just wasn't going to happen. But he was special because his daddy was a 4-star admiral, and so was his granddaddy. So he wasn't allowed to go to Arlington because he was a traitor. But the Naval Academy would let him come get buried there. And, I'm a little hard on these institutions that bend the rules for political gain. And if John McCain wasn't qualified to be at a national cemetery like Arlington, why was he allowed to be buried at the Naval Academy? Because the Naval Academy Cemetery should honor the graduates of Annapolis that have gone on to serve their country. And I don't include myself in that because I don't want to associate with any organization that doesn't, play by the rules. And so the way I'm going to hopefully avoid that whole morass is my wife, Denise, at her own request, she was cremated. And so I intend to be cremated for a couple of reasons. That way nobody has to deny me or invite me to be buried at some location. And also, I have 5 children and 10 grandchildren, and I'll probably have more grandchildren, but I wouldn't want those people to have to travel occasionally to come to where Grandpa's buried, because what's going to be in Grandpa's grave would be a decaying, decomposing body, which is not me. And so if I can get cremated, like my wife Denise was, then I have the hope that I will be able to rematerialize, just like I've been told that Denise and Dr. Good Vibes are going to meet me at the gates of heaven. And what a miraculous homecoming that will be. I said will be, not might be. That I have confidence that that will happen. Okay, I hope I answered your question.
You did. And I think I have one more question, and then we'll call it a wrap, if you don't mind, because Nishan was here last time from Armenia, and I think he has a question for you that he didn't get to ask last time. Nishan, do you want to go ahead?
Okay. Hi, Phil. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm fine. My name is Nishan. I'm from Armenia, in Yerevan, near to Vladimir Putin, just as a joke. But I have a question. I have a lot of questions, but I just want to ask you one question because I don't want to make you tired. So my question is, like the cabal, since long time, they are doing these things for us. And because of, they are just, benefiting from our free will, let's say. And they change everything and, they make all the things even though they change the constitution or they just make some things to just benefit from them and they just put their system. Now, my question is, this is coming from long time back, even though like Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln and the others, all of them, they are the Bar Association people. So my question is like the good guys that time, why or how I can say it, they saw this is coming. Why they didn't stop it from the beginning? So what was the reason that we just came to a situation? It's very, very, very bad.
Okay, I think I understand what you're asking. Are you asking why the attack of 9/11 was allowed to occur?
Exactly. 9/11, the other things also, yes.
Yeah, well, they were, did you say you're from Armenia?
Yes, exactly, from Armenia.
Okay, well, Armenia has a rich place in political history, but, I'm sort of ignorant of any place that's not in Wisconsin, but is Armenia, were they Muslim or were they Christians, say, 100 years ago?
No, we are Christian, and like we are the first nation has been adopted the Christianity in the history.
Okay, that's sort of what I thought. And isn't that why Ataturk from Turkey was upset with Armenia?
Yes, actually, to be honest, yes, absolutely. And we have been massacred in 1915 like 1.5 million, and they took our lands and everything.
Well, that really offends me. And what, can I do anything to help the Armenian people? Well, I think so, especially since your foundation is in Christianity. I think if I were to say a prayer to God or Jesus or both right now, I don't think it would fall on deaf ears. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm just waiting also, to be honest with you, that United States will be solve their problems and get rid of this cabal once and for all. And as 107, he says that we will just finish cleaning the United States, and then we will just go and help the brothers worldwide as a brother.
Yeah, and that's brothers of Christian brothers or Muslim brothers or agnostic brothers. It doesn't matter. Brothers and sisters unite.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Well, who's running this show right now? Is it Tracy?
Yes, I am, but you're kind of running it right now too.
Well,
and I'm
I just
thankful.
do my part, but do you think I could say a prayer for Armenians?
You can say a prayer for anybody you want to, buddy.
Okay, well, here we go. Dear Heavenly Father, dear Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, I would like you to revisit the Armenian genocide that happened a long time ago at the hands of Turkey, and specifically a leader of the Turkish military at that time, whose name was Ataturk. And there's no way that, or not that I'm aware of, that the massacred people that died in the genocide, I don't know if they can rematerialize. But if my wife Denise and my friend Dr. Goodvibes are going to be able to rematerialize and meet me at the gates of heaven, then I just pray to God and I pray to Jesus that they will find a way to comfort the victims of the Armenian genocide. And I think that Christians and Muslims and the real Jewish people, they need to stop attacking each other and just learn to live in love and harmony. And that's my prayer for the Armenian people, but it's also my prayer for everybody else on earth. It's way past time to put war and fighting behind us and to invite God and his representatives to provide us with everlasting peace, specifically for 1,000 years going forward. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
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 Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amen.
Well, you're welcome. And I'm really sorry about what Ataturk and his friends did to the Armenian people. And I've actually met one Armenian person, and my life is really unusual, but I was in an elevator in Astana, Kazakhstan, and somewhere on my way up or down, the elevator car stopped, and a very attractive lady came in, and I was just curious as to what her ethnicity was because she was so beautiful. And so I didn't say anything suggestive. I just asked a professional question, and she said, I'm Armenian. And so then I carried on a brief conversation with her while the elevator took her to her destination, or me to mine, or both of us. But I mean, that's a random occurrence that happened in 2008. And so that's 15 years ago. And I can still remember it. So just like you're telling me that you're from Armenia and that you've suffered a lot at the hands of the Turkish people, I think of that, since I can't visualize you right now, but I can visualize that beautiful lady from Armenia who was well behaved and by any male standards, she was attractive. And she was conversant, and she was not boastful, and she was not hesitant to speak. So I've had a lot of experience with a lot of different people from all around the world, and I've never had anybody try to harm me because I'm a Christian. And if someone tried to harm me because I'm a Christian, if God or Jesus wouldn't protect me from the harm, then I just go happily, knowing that I'd been martyred for my faith. But until I'm done living on earth, I will be living in faith, and I will be in fear of nobody. How's that?
Yeah, that's great, and God bless you. And you're right, our ladies, they are beautiful. Don't be offended, ladies here.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any idea who she was. She was not offended because I'm very respectful of ladies and females. And the reason I am respectful, first of all, I'm so old. Some of the things that young men are motivated by, I'm no longer motivated by, because I want to honor my wife and honor my daughters and honor my mother. And they're all ladies. And so if I can honor the ladies in my family, shouldn't I be honoring all the other ladies on earth? And so that's what I try to do.
God bless you.
Okay, well, God bless you too. And Tracy, are we going to wrap this up now?
Yeah, we'll wrap it up so you can get some rest. And we thank you for coming in today and gracing us with your presence and your knowledge. And we appreciate you, Field. And God bless. I love you, friend.
Hey, Tracy,
Well,
may I say something? Sorry, go ahead, Phil. This is Jenny. Go ahead.
Somebody just said, can I say something? So please do.
Well, Phil, this is Jenny. I just would like to say thank you once again for coming in and gracing us, like Tracy says, with your presence. Another great set of information that you always deliver. So I know we all appreciate it here, and I just want to tell you thank you. I've been in listening mode. I have my day gig that I'm doing, so I just want to pop in here real quickly and tell you thank you. And again, we love you and appreciate you. So thank you, Phil.
You're very welcome. And please just keep in mind that even though I might be the person that's delivering this information, I'm not the person or the power that caused these things to be true. I'm just a reporter, so to speak. And so my job is quite easy. When I just found out this morning, about 30 minutes before we went live, that we were going to go live. And so I obviously didn't have time to go research all these myriad subjects, but I don't have to research anything because God and Jesus have led me by the hand and shown me the path they want me to walk. And then I learn something every step of the way. And so when it's time to go on a radio show, such as this one, all I have to do is open my mouth and tell the truth. And as long as I tell the truth, I should be in good shape forever. So I'll say goodbye to everyone. And thank you for the courtesy of sharing your time with Tracy and Jenny and Paula and myself and my new Armenian brother. And we'll see you next time. And I don't know when the next time will be, but I do know that 2 weeks from today, which will be the 14th of whatever the next month is, July? Yeah.
Yes, July.
Yeah. On the 14th of July, myself and Tracy will be appearing on video from my home computer. And until then, I'll just say I'm sure we'll do another radio show before Tracy and her husband come to Plum City. But until then, until I see you again or you hear from me again, God bless you all, and take care of each other, because we only get fool around once in this life. I'll say bye-bye and God bless you.
God bless everybody.
And everybody